Hey, boys and girls. I found out this afternoon that we would not be together again in our classroom this year. And while it makes me extremely sad, I wanted to do something that we could at least have some closure for our classes this year. And I thought about this. I brought Tangerine home with me. And we never did finish reading it in school. So, and I'm not the best at these videos, but I'm going to try. I'm just going to read the story to you in a couple of different videos, and you may even do better just listening rather than watching, but here goes. When we last left off with Tangerine, there was this big meeting about Antoine Thomas not being eligible to play for Lake Windsor High School because he didn't live in that area, because he actually lived in Tangerine County. And so the Fishers were having a meeting at their house. So that's where we're going to pick up. And it's Sunday, December the 3rd, and it's actually later that day. With everything else fighting for room in my head, I must confess that Mom and Dad's important meeting didn't seem very important to me. That's why it took me by surprise. As I came downstairs, I heard Mom's voice, tense and upset. I want this thing to be over with, completely finished, everyone gone by the time my parents get here. Dad was just as tense. What? And you think I don't? I don't want them butting in on this. They were setting up in the great room, setting it up as if for a homeowners meeting. They arranged 10 chairs facing the fireplace for the guests, and another 10 chairs off to the side by the kitchen. These chairs, as it turned out, were for the families, two families, the Fishers and the Bowers. As the guests arrived, they were handed sheets of paper by Dad. I took one for myself and read it. It was a list of items that had been stolen from houses in Lake Windsor Downs, as compiled by the Tangerine County Sheriff's Department. There were notations like Rolex watch, $900, recovered, and pearls, antique, $500, not recovered. By 1 o'clock, all the guests had been seated. I knew who most of them were. They were from Joey's Street, the street where all the houses had been tinted. That's what they had all had in common. The white Tudor, the gray Lancaster, the yellow Stuart. Today they were all the same. Today they were all the blue tints. The chairs off to the side were occupied by Mom and Dad, Arthur Bear, Sr., Miss Bear, who I had never seen before, and Paige Bear. Arthur Bear Sr. looked angry. The rest of them looked sick at heart. Arthur Bear Jr. had joined Eric out on the patio, where the two of them were slouching silently. Mom and Dad set out a pair of chairs for them next to their families, but they weren't sitting in them. I wasn't sitting in a family chair either. I chose a place on the couch next to the coffee table. Mom stood up to open the meeting, but before she spoke, she turned and looked outside at Eric. Then she walked into the kitchen, opened the patio door, and said in a trembling voice, "Eric, would you come in here, please?" Neither Eric nor Arthur moved. Mom waited them out in front of everyone. Silence filled the great room like an embarrassing smell. Finally, Mom repeated, "Eric, would you come in here, please?" Arthur Bear Sr. leaned around the corner and barked, "Arthur, get in here!" First Arthur, then Eric staggered to their feet and moved slowly inside to the empty chairs next to their families. When they sat down, there was a low gasp, and the guests looked upon their horrible faces. Eric's nose was blood red and swollen. His eyes were mere slits and rimmed with black like a raccoon's. Believe it or not, Arthur looked worse. Arthur's face was covered with purple bumps and red cuts. His lips were cracked and swollen too. He looked out of place among humans, like an ogre in a storybook. Mom picked up her notebook, opened it, and started to speak in an even, formal voice. "On behalf of the Bear family and the Fisher family, I want to thank you for coming. It is my duty to inform all of you the following." She looked down at her notes and read, "On November 22nd, I made a shocking discovery. While out at our storage bin searching for boxes of winter clothing, I found a gym bag that did not belong there. When I opened this gym bag, I found a U.S. Army gas mask, a pair of rubber gloves, and a plastic supermarket bag filled with diamond earrings, watches, gold rings, and many other types of precious jewelry. This time, there was a loud gasp from the audience, including me. That afternoon, I spoke with Sergeant Edwards of the Tangerine County Sheriff's Department. You probably know his name. Sergeant Edwards confirmed that the items in the gym bag matched the descriptions of the items that were stolen from your homes while they were tinted. Mom closed the notebook and made eye contact with the guests. It didn't take a genius to figure out the rest. These items were stolen by Eric Fisher and Arthur Bayer. They have admitted as much. They have had no choice but to admit it. Arthur used the gas mask to enter the tinted homes. Then he stole items from those homes while Eric kept watch outside. She pulled out a copy of the sheet that had each guest had been given. We have recovered some of the items already. My husband will tell you more about that. Eric and Arthur gave some of your things away, and we are working on getting them back. Mom nodded at Paige. Paige Bayer has already returned the items that were given to her. Her friend, Tina Turrington, who agreed to come here today but who obviously has not showed up, has already returned what was given to her. They have also provided us with the names of other Lake Windsor High School students who received stolen items from Eric and Arthur. We have contacted the parents of all of these students and are confident that we will be able to get back those stolen items. Mom stared blankly at the guest for a minute and then said, "My husband has more to say to you." Dad stood up as Mom sat down. He picked up where she left off. "That's right. Sergeant Edwards is the Tangerine County officer in charge of all of your cases. He has allowed us, and by us I mean the Fishers and the Bears, to approach you with a plan to make restitution. That is, Eric and Arthur will make full restitution to all of you for all of your stolen property. If any item cannot be recovered and returned, Mr. Bear and I will guarantee in full value to you in cash." Dad held up a copy of the list of the stolen items. "You can see what we have already recovered. Those items could be released to you as early as tomorrow. If we can get all of you to agree to this restitution plan, and it has to be unanimous agreement, then the Sheriff's Department will not pursue further charges against Eric and Arthur." I felt sorry for Dad at that moment. He just couldn't give up. He had too much invested in the Eric Fisher football dream, and he just couldn't give up. I wanted to say, "Look at Eric's face, Dad. That's what he really looks like." But I kept quiet. The phone rang, so I leaned over the coffee table and grabbed the portable. It was Joey, and he was practically screaming into the receiver. "The sheriff deputies are at Arthur Bayer's house. They're sitting in a car out front." "Oh, yeah?" "Yeah, they stopped me on my bike. They asked if I knew where he was." "I know where he is." "Yeah? Where?" "He's right here." "Whoa, can I tell them?" "Yeah, why not?" Joey slammed down the phone. Arthur Bayer Sr. was speaking now. He was angry. "I've talked to my son about this. He has admitted to his wrongdoing. He has said that he is sorry, and he has made full disclosure of the facts. The question today is, do you want to prosecute these two dumb kids and possibly ruin their lives? Or do you want them to make full restitution to you, like men, and get on with their lives? Do you want to give them a second chance or not?" I searched the faces of the people from the blue tents. Their jaws were set. Their eyes were focused on the ugly faces of Eric and Arthur. The blue tents clearly felt no pity for those two thieves sitting in their chairs staring at the floor, voiceless, useless, lifeless, like a pair of mannequins in a dumpster. One man spoke up against Mr. Bear. He said, "Don't go blaming me for ruining your kid's life. I didn't ask your kid to break into my house." Mr. Bear answered coldly, "No, of course you didn't." The man turned to the others and continued, "Why should they escape all punishment for their crimes? That's not justice. What if the cops had nabbed 2 kids from Tangerine for robbing our houses? They'd be in jail now." Mr. Bear waved a list at him. "Yeah, and you'd never see your property again. If this gets into the court system, you might never get your things back." The man shouted, "What is this? Blackmail? If I don't agree, I don't get my stuff back?" He looked at the others. "We're getting robbed all over again." Mr. Bear was furious, but controlled. "Yeah, well, maybe you're the one person in the world who never did anything wrong in your life. Maybe you were born perfect. Maybe you were never a dumb kid once." The man didn't back down. "I'll tell you what I never did. I never broke into an old lady's bedroom and ransacked through her drawer and stole her pearl necklace that was handed down to her by her own grandmother and then gave it to my girlfriend like I was a big man or something. I never did that. And I don't know anyone else that did either. Your kid and that other kid are in a class all by themselves." Mr. Bear didn't reply. He was so angry that he walked back to his seat and sat down, leaving no speaker at all in front of the meeting. Dad got up again, looked at them all, and asked simply, "Do you accept our plan for making restitution or not?" What choice did they have? In the end, the blue tent people accepted the plan reluctantly. They agreed, reluctantly, to give Eric and Arthur that second chance. The second chance you get when your parents can guarantee full restitution. The second chance you get when you can kick a 50-yard goal. The meeting broke up quickly. Mr. Bear led his family directly to the closed door. The other guests started to file out silently, but they were stopped in their tracks. Something was blocking their passage. I hurried over to the side window and looked out. The first thing I saw was Joey. He was straddling his bike out on the sidewalk. He was squinting in the sun. I looked to his left, and there they were. 2 sheriff's deputies, one thin with blonde hair, the other big and muscular with a black mustache. Joy pointed out Arthur Bear, and the 2 deputies started toward him. Arthur and his father stopped still right in front of my window while the rest of the guests and the family squeezed out onto the driveway. The big deputy asked, "Are you Arthur Bear?" Arthur nodded meekly. The deputy said, "Extend both hands, please, Mr. Bear." Arthur did, and the deputy calmly clicked a pair of handcuffs onto his wrist. His partner circled Arthur and started to pat him down, looking for a weapon. I hurried to the door and pushed my way through. The big deputy was reading Arthur his rights. "Arthur Bear, you are under arrest in connection with the murder of Louis Cruz. You have the right to remain silent." Arthur's father was paralyzed in a state of shock. But when he heard the charge, he yelled out, "Wait a minute, Arthur, is that the guy you told me about? The guy at football practice?" Arthur, terrified, nodded his head rapidly. His father continued, "Listen, officer, this is not right. This is a mistake. Arthur told me all about this guy back when this first happened." The deputy, whose name tag said Sergeant Rojas, started walking with his prisoner, not listening. "Arthur told me about a guy who showed up at football practice looking for a fight. He didn't belong up there. He was just looking for trouble. Am I right, Arthur?" Arthur continued to nod. He came up to Arthur and took a swing at him. A swing. So Arthur hit him back one time, am I right? Arthur nodded, and that was the end of it. The guy came up there looking for a fight, and he found one. The guy didn't even belong up there. I couldn't listen to any more of this. I shouted, "He belonged up there." Arthur's father turned to see who had said this. I went on, "He belonged up there as much as you and your stupid kid do." I looked at the blonde deputy. The weapon that he used to kill Louis Cruz was a blackjack. This made Sergeant Rojas stop in front of the open door of the police cruiser. He turned and stared at me, so I added, "It's probably still in his Land Cruiser, back at his house. It was there on Friday night anyway." Sergeant Rojas called over, "How do you know he used a blackjack?" "I saw him do it. I saw Arthur Bayer sneak up on Louis Cruz like a coward and hit him on the side of the head. Louis never even saw it coming." Sergeant Rojas told the blonde guy, "Get over there and guard that vehicle until I get back." The blonde deputy took off, running. Sergeant Rojas turned to me. "What else did you see?" I stood up straight and faced them all, like I had seen Louis Cruz do. I heard Eric Fisher tell him to do it." The heads in the crowd all turned together toward Eric. Sergeant Rojas pointed one finger at him and ordered, "You, get over here." Eric shuffled forward, like he was already wearing leg irons. The sergeant demanded, "Is that true?" Eric looked at Dad. Dad repeated the words, "Is that true?" Eric hesitated for just a moment, then started to nod. At Dad, at the sergeant, at everyone in the crowd, steadily, up and down. He nodded to us all. Sergeant Rojas instructed Dad, "You keep this young man in the house. Not in the neighborhood, not in the yard, in the house. I may call or come back at any time, and I expect him to be here." Dad whispered that he understood. The sergeant turned his attention to me. "Do we have your statement, son?" "No, sir." Then I felt compelled to add, I wasn't brave enough to give my statement. He eyeballed me. "Are you willing to give a statement now, if called upon?" "Yes, sir." He put one hand on Arthur's head and pushed him down into the seat of the back of the cruiser. The rest of the bears hurried into their car to follow. I stood there with Joey and watched them pull away. The people from the meeting drifted off toward their homes, shaking their heads and talking. Joey held out his fist, and I banged my fist down on it, and he said, "I'm going to hustle over to Bears and see what that deputy does." "Okay, I'll talk to you later." Once Joey rode away, we found ourselves alone. Mom, Dad, Eric, and me. We walked together back up the driveway and into the garage. Eric stopped by the door, turned, and looked at me through his swollen eyes. I looked back through my thick lenses. He seemed to be struggling with something. Maybe a memory. Maybe he was reliving a scene from long ago. The four of us remained posed there, like we were frozen in time. Four frozen figures from the Wonders of the World exhibit. Mom finally broke the spell when she whispered to herself, "Oh no, not now." We all turned to see Grandmom and Grandpa walking up the driveway. Mom whispered again, "What are we going to tell them?" I knew the answer to that. "We're going to tell them something bad, Mom." Grandmom and Grandpa stopped at the top of the incline, framed in the rectangular opening. Grandmom said, "Caroline, have we come at a bad time?" Mom shook her head. "No, you're right on time. You right here when you said you'd be." Grandpa looked hard at Eric. He asked him, "What happened to your eyes?" Eric answered him in a surprisingly strong voice. "I got kicked in the face, Grandpa. Some kid kicked me in the face." Grandpa glanced over at me and then back at Eric. He gave him a short nod, like he understood. Eric said, "Excuse me," and then he opened the door and disappeared inside. Dad gestured to Grandma and Grandpa to come in too. They exchanged a worried look and then started forward. Mom and Dad led us into the kitchen and sat at the round table. Grandma and Grandpa looked me up and down, and then Grandma asked her usual question, "How are you, Pa?" "All right, I'm all right." Grandpa clapped me on the shoulder. "That's good." I dragged over a stool from the counter so the five of us could sit around the table. Eric wasn't anywhere to be seen. I figured he had gone upstairs to his room. Mom and Dad took turns talking, just as they had at the meeting. Grandmom and Grandpop didn't seem surprised by any of what they heard. They took it all in without even blinking. Then when it was over, when we had told them everything bad there was to tell, we paused and waited. Grandmom put her hand on her heart, sighed deeply, and said, "You know what? I'm going to tell you, Caroline." Mom closed her eyes. "You're paying now for what you didn't do back then." Mom agreed with her completely. I know. But Dad wasn't so quick to surrender. He said curtly, "That's easy to say now. It's easy enough 7 years after the fact to say, 'I told you so.'" Grandma replied flatly, "We're not saying that." Grandpa leveled a stare at him. "We did tell you so. Eric did need help. He needed a doctor's help." Dad countered with, "No, Eric did not need a doctor's help. He did not need drugs. He did not need to be one of those medicated kids who float around all the time like they're underwater." "What drugs? We're not talking about drugs. The kid needed to know which end was up, that's all. First off, he needed to get his backside whipped for hurting Paul." Dad looked away. He clearly wanted out of this conversation. I guess we all did, because we all sat for a long minute in silence. Grandpa finally said, "Okay, let me be the one to apologize. I don't have all the answers. I'm not saying I do." He said to Mom, "We're family, that's all I know. We'll help you any way we can." He said to Grandmom, "I think the best thing we can do right now is to get down to Orlando and leave them alone." Mom tried half-heartedly to talk them out of it. Dad didn't say a word. He drifted off toward the great room. Mom said, "At least take a tour of the house. That's what you came here for." Grandmom and Grandpop exchanged another look. Grandmom said, "A quick tour." I tagged along behind them on a fast lap around the ground floor. We passed by Dad sitting in his alcove in front of the IBM. I watched him as Mom pointed out things in the great room. He was sitting in a trance-like state in front of the screen with the green light of the Eric Scholarship Offers file washing over his face. Mom described the top floor briefly, but she didn't take them up there. The tour ended in the foyer at the front door. Grandmom said, "It's a lovely house," and stepped outside. Grandpa, however, was not quite finished. He signaled, "Just a minute," climbed the stairs, and turned left. He knocked, waited a moment, and then spoke quietly to Eric through the door. Then he came back down to Mom. He told her, "It's a beautiful house, all right. Nothing like those places I made you live in, huh?" Mom looked like she might cry. Grandpa put an arm around her shoulder. "Good luck to you in it, honey. Good luck to you from here on." Then he hurried out to catch up with Grandma. Mom watched him drive away down the street until the ringing phone pulled her back inside. She picked it up, listened, and briefly answered, "We'll be there." Her eyes drifted over to mine. She spoke in a weary voice, a voice beyond anger, beyond upset. "That was your principal, Dr. Johnson. She wants to see both of us in her office tomorrow morning at 7:30 sharp." So I'll pick up reading another time, and I hope that you enjoyed the part that we read today, and I hope that you remember the beginnings of Tangerine, and we'll finish reading it together. Goodbye.